My name is Iris Delaney, and I'm 30 years old. I used to think a good daughter was a quiet daughter. Help first, speak later, never make a mess anyone can see. When something broke, I fixed it. When someone forgot, I remembered. When money fell short, I bridged the gap and told myself that love was just another word for logistics. So when my parents' anniversary came up, I did what I always do. I built the night they wanted from the ground up. $9,200. That's the ledger line, not the story. The story is late calls with vendors, comparing quotes until my eyes blurred, and scrolling through my mother's saved Pinterest boards to find that white, high-peak tent she'd swooned over a year ago. I booked it. I found a caterer willing to create a menu around my father's fussy list of preferences. I hunted down a florist who could source blue orchids because Dad once mentioned his grandmother loved them. I flagged the weather patterns, confirmed amperage for the string lights, and put down deposits. My siblings did what they always do too. My sister texted, "Ugh, money's tight, mortgage and all." My brother said he'd see what he could do, which is Delaney family code for absolutely nothing. I didn't expect a parade. I expected a chair at the table. A week before the party, my phone buzzed with a text from my aunt. 10 words, no cushioning. By the way, we're keeping the guest list tight. You're not included. I read it twice, then a third time, as if it might rearrange itself into something sane. I waited for a second message. Wrong person, autocorrect, anything. Instead, my mother chimed in a few minutes later with the sentence I've had thrown at me since childhood like a damp towel. It's not personal. It landed like a blade wrapped in cotton. I didn't fight, I didn't beg. I opened my laptop and started making calls. The tent, cancelable up to 48 hours, was gone with a polite email and a refund confirmation. The catering, paid through a platform that lets you freeze funds for dispute review, was paused. The venue deposit was flagged for material change in event terms. The florist had already ordered the orchids. I took that loss. A loss is not the same thing as defeat. That night, Noah came over with takeout and a look that said he could feel the storm in the room without asking for thunder. He didn't tell me what to do. He didn't ask me to be nicer than what was fair. He just sat across from me while my fingers moved over a keyboard like I was disarming a bomb. The morning of the party, my phone rang 17 times. Dad, then Mom, then Aunt, then Dad again, looping like an alarm that thinks volume equals authority. On the 18th call, I answered. Dad didn't bother with hello. Iris, what the hell did you do? I looked at the clock, at the neat list in my notebook with every step and timestamp, and at the blue smear of orchid dye still on my thumb. It's not personal, I said, and hung up. Silence arrived like a verdict. Not peace, clarity. I made coffee. I stood at the sink and let the mug warm my hands until I could feel my pulse settle. This wasn't a tantrum. Tantrums explode and vanish. This was a straight line from cause to effect. I had funded their night, then been informed I wasn't welcome at it. They drew the circle. I erased my name from the bill. I scrolled through my camera roll, past screenshots of tent specs and menu mock-ups, all the invisible labor a family will take without tasting it. My mother's "It's not personal" glowed on the screen like a neon sign advertising a lie. I saved it to a folder named Receipts. Around noon, my sister posted a story, then deleted it, then reposted a different angle. No tent, of course. The backyard looked naked, chairs scraped from the garage, a folding table with supermarket carnations stuffed into a glass pitcher. Dad hovered in the background with his arms crossed, the expression of a man who spent years assuming other people would soften the world for him. My mother smiled in a photo with her sisters, puffy eyes, uneven liner, the brittle posture of someone trying to hold a party together with the thread of denial. I should have felt satisfaction. I felt accurate. By evening, the story had already begun to molt. No one called to apologize. No one said, "We messed up." Instead, a single text floated in from my mother. "Can we talk?" I set the phone face down on the table and turned to Noah, who was quietly fixing a stubborn lamp I'd been meaning to deal with for weeks. He looked up, reading me like weather. "I'm not going to fix it this time," I said. "The lamp?" he asked, mouth tipping. "The story," I said. He nodded. Then he switched off the lamp, crossed the room, and wrapped his arms around me without turning me into someone softer than I am. The next day, nothing. The day after, nothing. On the third day, my aunt sent a paragraph that started with, "I don't usually get involved in drama," a lie, and ended with, "I hope one day you grow out of this selfish phase." The word selfish rolled around my head like a coin. I thought about the $2,800 I'd covered for a roof repair last fall when Dad sighed too loudly at dinner about birthdays I funded, gifts I sourced, software I installed, endless "could you swing by?" favors that were really jobs. People who have lived on your labor will call your boundaries cruelty. That evening, I opened the folder, receipts, and took inventory of the story I would not be gaslit out of: the paid invoices for tent and catering and florist, the deposit flag confirmation, the texts where I was cut out, the "it's not personal." I added a photo of the backyard from my sister's page, the naked sky, the folding table, the picture of carnations slouching like they knew. Noah poured me tea and said nothing. Silence can be violence. It can also be shelter. This was the second kind. By the fifth night, I had written and deleted half a dozen messages that tried to make grief sound reasonable. Then I wrote nothing. I let the ledger stand. Here's what I didn't do. I didn't explain the emotional math to people who preferred the bill paid and the lights dimmed. Here's what I did do. I took my life off call. At 10:14 p.m., my mother's voicemail arrived with her best Sunday school voice. "We miss you. It's time to move past all this drama. You know you're part of this family." The timing told the truth behind the words. They didn't miss me. They missed the part of me that did their work for free. I put the phone back down. I picked up a pencil. I sketched a small bookshelf I wanted to build for the corner by the window, the one that gets the good light in the morning. When the sketch felt right, I breathed out and realized I hadn't been holding my breath for them anymore. It wasn't revenge, it was release. And they were about to find out what a quiet no really costs. 2 weeks of silence. That's all it took for my absence to become noticeable, not because they missed me, but because they missed what I did. In my family, silence was usually a tactic, a Cold War wrapped in politeness. You'd give it a few days, someone would cave, an apology without the word sorry would be exchanged, and the cycle would resume. But this time, I didn't cave, and it didn't take long for the cracks to appear. The first message came from my brother. "Yo, not sure if you heard, but Mom's sink is leaking bad. Water everywhere." Like it was small talk. Like maybe I'd jump into action, drive 2 hours on a Saturday, crawl under their sink with a wrench, and fix it like old times. I didn't reply. A day later, Mom messaged me herself. "Hi, Iris, the kitchen sink's leaking again. Not a big deal, but if you have a moment..." I read it. I waited. Then I typed 4 words. "Call a plumber. Good luck." She replied within minutes. "They're charging $350 just to look at it. Can you believe that?" I didn't respond. That's when it started, the small chain of consequences. Day 3, a photo from Dad. Mold under the sink. No caption, no greeting. Just the picture, as if the image would tug at the muscle memory of guilt. I ignored it. Instead, I spent the evening exactly how I wanted, sitting on my couch, eating takeout, sketching plans for the little bookshelf I'd designed. I even played music out loud, which I hadn't done in years. It's strange how peace feels foreign when you've been trained to earn it. By the end of that week, their home became a revolving door of breakdowns. The garage door wouldn't close. The printer refused to connect to Wi-Fi. The microwave made a sound that could only be described as haunted. Every 2 or 3 days, I got a new text. "Do you know how to reset this? Still have that tool you used on the gutters?" Never, "I'm sorry." Never, "We were wrong. Just help me." For the first time, I didn't. And my life started expanding in the space they used to occupy. I joined a woodworking class at a local shop. The first time I held a chisel, I thought about all the years I'd used tools for other people's benefit. It felt good to build something that didn't fix someone else's neglect. I started going to the gym again, cooking for myself, reading, sleeping without the reflex of waiting for my phone to buzz with a new crisis disguised as a casual, "Hey, can you swing by?" It was freedom disguised as boredom, the kind of quiet that feels awkward at first, then holy. About 10 days in, I got a voicemail from Mom. Her tone was painfully soft, like she was reading from a script labeled Guilt Level 2. "We've let this go on long enough, Iris. We miss you. It's time to move past all that drama. You know you're part of this family." I played it twice. They didn't miss me. They missed the utility of me. The difference is enormous once you learn to hear it. Then, just when the air started to clear, the story shifted. A message popped up from my cousin Lydia, one of those relatives who never texts unless it's gossip disguised as concern. Hey, your sister said things got weird with you before the anniversary. Are you okay? I stared at it for a moment before replying. Define weird. A pause, then another text. She said you backed out last minute, that you never actually paid for anything, and they were worried about you. Something about stress. There it was. The rewrite. The narrative makeover. I wasn't the scapegoat anymore. I was the unstable one. I didn't argue. I sent Lydia screenshots. The catering invoice paid in full. The tent rental contract canceled within policy. The venue deposit flagged and refunded. The text from Mom. It's not personal. Lydia's reply was immediate. What the hell? They made it sound like you ghosted. I had no idea. Of course she didn't. That was the beauty of my family's storytelling. They'd turn betrayal into concern and still look like heroes by dessert. So I stopped correcting rumors one by one. I decided to end the whispering in a single stroke. That night, I created a group chat. I added my parents, my siblings, 2 cousins, and 1 uncle who always swore he didn't take sides. My message was short. Since there's been confusion, I figured it's best to share everything. Then I attached the receipts, every invoice, text, and timestamp, the story in full color, and then I muted the chat. I didn't stick around to watch the implosion. I turned off my phone, put on a hoodie, and went for a walk under streetlights that hummed like static. 2 days later, when I turned my phone back on, the storm had landed. 36 missed calls, 6 voicemails from Mom alternating between guilt and rage, 5 texts from my sister that went from denial to blame to, "You embarrassed us." Even my aunt chimed in. Was it really necessary to humiliate everyone like that? Not one apology, just anger that the truth had finally found its voice. I scrolled through every message, then I smiled, because that was the moment I realized I'd finally stopped needing them to understand me. I opened my computer and began dismantling the invisible network I'd built to keep their lives running. First, the tax software I used to file for them every year for free. Deleted their profiles, disabled autofill, removed stored documents. Then the HVAC plan I'd been paying for since their furnace failed 2 winters ago. Canceled. If they wanted coverage, they could set it up under their own name. Then I opened my budget planner, where I'd set up monthly transfers, little gifts that always turned into obligations. Groceries, bills, emergencies that weren't. I shut them all off, every single one. And then I sat back and exhaled, long and deep. It wasn't vengeance, it was inventory. The kind you take when you've spent too long keeping other people's shelves stocked. When Noah came home, he found me sitting on the floor, surrounded by receipts, my laptop open like an altar. He didn't ask what I was doing, he just said, "Finally?" I nodded. Finally. And for the first time, I realized something simple but revolutionary. I wasn't cutting them off. I was returning what never belonged to them. A month of silence. Not the kind that heals, the kind that listens for weakness. I knew the pattern. My family never stayed quiet because they'd changed. They stayed quiet because they were calculating their next move. They didn't apologize. They strategized. The first sign came in the form of an email from my dad. He almost never used email. His inbox was a graveyard of unread store promotions and password resets. The subject line read, "We need to talk." The body was short. "We're updating our estate planning documents and thought it'd be a good idea to have a conversation beforehand." That was it. No hi. No love, Dad. Just the financial equivalent of bait. I didn't bite. I deleted it without replying. That same weekend, a letter arrived. A real one. Thick paper, my father's slanted handwriting on the envelope. I opened it slowly, my chest tight with something between dread and curiosity. Inside were 2 pages of the closest thing to an apology I'd ever seen from him, or at least, what looked like one. He didn't take ownership. He wrote things like, "I regret how things unfolded, and I wish you hadn't felt excluded." Not "I excluded you," just "you felt excluded." Regret without accountability is just PR. For a brief second, I almost softened. Then my phone buzzed. It was my friend Drew, who still lived near my parents. He said, "Your dad's been telling the neighbors you went off the rails. Something about a tent and money changing you." The letter wasn't remorse, it was reputation control. That night, another invitation appeared. A group text from my sister. "Hey, we're having a small dinner. Just family. It's time to move on." Move on. A phrase that skips every step between harm and healing. I declined politely. 3 hours later, she called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice sounded rehearsed, brittle. "We're all ready to forgive how you handled things. Mom really wants you to come. Forgive me. I didn't even get angry. I just felt tired. The kind of tired that settles in your bones and whispers, "You've outgrown this room." The next morning, Dad called directly. When I answered, his tone was measured, like someone trying to sound calm while standing on a collapsing bridge. "Iris," he began, "there's another family cookout coming up. It'd mean a lot to your mother if you came." I looked out the window at the morning light touching the bookshelf I'd built myself. Smooth wood, clean lines, not a single piece out of place. "I'm not coming," I said. He hesitated. "Why not?" "Because I don't forgive you, any of you, and I'm not going to pretend this is normal." The silence on his end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, he exhaled. "So that's it then?" "Yeah," I said softly. "At least for now." Then I hung up. No shouting, no drama, just a clean break. And for the first time, they had to sit in the quiet, the kind that can't be fixed with small talk or guilt. Weeks passed. Autumn crept in, slow and golden. I took time off work, rented a cabin in Oregon, and disappeared for a while. No phone, no internet, just air that didn't ask anything of me. Each morning, I hiked through forests that smelled of rain and cedar. I cooked simple meals, read, built small shelves, listened to nothing but wind and my own heartbeat. It was strange how peace didn't feel like joy at first. It felt like withdrawal, like detoxing from years of being needed for all the wrong reasons. When I came back, I didn't expect anything to change, but for once, I was fine with that. Then, right as the leaves began to fall, my mother sent a message. Long, carefully worded. You could see the therapist's fingerprints all over it. "We've been thinking a lot about how things went. We realize we treated you unfairly. We'd like to apologize and reconnect." She didn't mention the party, or the lies, or the smear campaign. Just a vague, softened apology. Sorry for everything and nothing. 2 days later, Dad left a voicemail. He sounded older. "We want to make things right. We should have handled things better. I know I've said that before, but..." He trailed off. There was something in his voice that hadn't been there before. Not manipulation, not pride, just exhaustion. Maybe the house had finally gone too quiet. Maybe the sink, the garage, the printer, the life, all of it, had started to fall apart for real. I called Ray, the therapist I'd been seeing since this whole mess began, and asked what she thought. She said, "People don't always apologize to make amends. Sometimes they apologize because they can't stand the silence anymore. The question is, what do you need?" What I needed was closure, not reunion. Still, I agreed to meet them. Neutral ground, a diner halfway between our towns, the kind with chipped mugs and two bright lights that make truth harder to avoid. When I walked in, they were already seated in the corner booth. My mother looked smaller somehow, her hands folded like she was trying to hold herself together. My father looked the same, serious, tidy, pretending this was business as usual. He started first, a weak attempt at small talk. "How's work? Still doing your projects?" I nodded. "Good, quiet." He laughed once. "You always liked quiet." Then Mom reached across the table, her fingers trembling. "We're really sorry, Iris," she said. "For everything. We know we messed up." Her voice cracked on everything. For a second, I almost saw the mother I used to look for in her, the one who'd tuck my hair behind my ear when I cried. But ghosts don't come back as people. They come back as moments. I let the words sit there. Then I said, "Thank you. I needed to hear that. But I'm not ready to come back. And honestly, I don't know when I will be." Mom blinked, as if she hadn't prepared for that response. Dad leaned back, staring out the window. For the first time in my life, they didn't try to argue. I continued, calm and steady. "I don't hate you. I just don't want to live in a version of this family where love means debt. I spent years earning a place that should have been mine by birthright, and I'm done doing that." When the waitress came by, I paid for my coffee before either of them could reach for their wallets. As I stood, I said, "This isn't goodbye, but it's not a return either." And then I left. That night, I sat in my car outside my apartment, the streetlights painting my windshield gold. I realized something. I didn't need their validation anymore. The story had shifted, and I was finally the narrator, not the footnote. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vengeful, just done. I thought that diner meeting would be the last chapter. A quiet ending, a clean page. But life doesn't stop when you close the book. Sometimes the story keeps whispering, even after you walk away. A few weeks later, I got a message from my cousin Amanda. The subject line simply said, "Coffee, it's not drama, promise." I almost ignored it. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. and Amanda had never been one for theatrics. She was the only one who hadn't taken sides, the only one who messaged during the storm just to ask, "Are you eating? Sleeping?" We met at a small coffee shop halfway across town. She was already there, 2 mugs on the table, her hands wrapped around one like she was afraid it might run away. She didn't waste time. "Your mom's been going to therapy." I froze halfway through sitting down. "What?" Amanda nodded. "For real. Not performative, not church counseling, actual therapy." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to laugh. Part of me wanted to cry. The idea of my mother, the woman who once called therapy a fad for people who can't handle real life, sitting across from a stranger and unraveling, was almost unimaginable. Amanda leaned forward. "It started after Thanksgiving. She tried to plan the dinner like always, and no one volunteered to help. Uncle Dean told her, 'We're not doing that again.' She broke down. Admitted what she'd done to you, to all of us, not just the party. Years of it." I stayed silent, trying to picture it. My mother crying, not out of anger or manipulation, but from realization. "She's trying, Iris," Amanda said gently, "but she's scared. Her therapist told her to write you a real apology, but she hasn't sent it yet. She's terrified you won't care, or worse, that you'll ignore it." I exhaled, slow. Maybe that's what accountability feels like. Scary. Amanda hesitated, then reached into her bag and slid a folded sheet of paper across the table. "This is from your dad." My heart tripped. "He sent something?" She nodded. "He didn't want to mail it. Said if you wanted to read it, I'd be the one to give it to you." The paper was plain, no letterhead, no flourish. Just one sentence in his uneven handwriting. "I'm trying to learn how to be a dad." That was it. No apology, no defense, just that. It hit harder than I expected, because for the first time, he hadn't tried to win. He hadn't tried to twist guilt into leverage. He'd written like a man finally admitting he never really knew how to love right and was, at last, trying to learn. I didn't say much, just folded the paper back carefully and put it in my bag. Amanda reached across the table and touched my hand. "I think they're finally seeing you, Iris. Not the fixer, not the wallet. You." I smiled, but it was the kind of smile you give when your chest hurts from holding too much at once. "Seeing me is one thing, changing is another." She nodded. "Yeah, but maybe it's a start." That night, I went home and sat at my desk, the note beside me. I didn't read it again. I didn't need to. The words were already carved somewhere deep. For years, I'd begged for the bare minimum. Now, I was being offered a beginning that didn't require begging. 2 weeks later, I drove past my parents' house. I didn't stop. I didn't knock. I just parked at the end of the street. The lights were on. The TV flickered behind the curtains. It looked like any other night in any other family's home. Ordinary, unremarkable. But for once, I didn't feel like I was on the outside of it. I felt like I'd stepped into my own story. When I got home, I took out a clean sheet of paper and started writing. "You don't need to apologize again. What you do from here matters more. I'm not ready to come back, but I'm open to something new, something slower, something real. If that's what you want too, then we'll see." I didn't sign it love, Iris. I just signed it Iris. Because love isn't always what you say. Sometimes it's what you stop allowing. The next morning, I mailed it. No expectation, no closure, just release. And as I walked out of the post office into the crisp winter air, I realized something I'd been circling for months. The hardest part of healing isn't cutting people off. It's learning how to live when you finally stop bleeding for them. I breathed in, slow. For the first time, I didn't feel hollow. I felt whole.